What happens when a seasoned journalist decides she's had enough of royal privilege and calls out a prince on live television? Well, you're about to find out, because what unfolded on The View was nothing short of explosive. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because trust me, you're going to want to discuss this one. The studio lights were blazing as Meghan Kelly settled into the guest host chair, her signature confidence radiating across the set. She had been invited to co-host for a special episode focusing on media accountability and public figures. Little did anyone know that Prince Harry would soon be walking into what would become one of the most uncomfortable interviews of his life. "Our next guest needs no introduction," announced Whoopi Goldberg, though there was a faint tension in her voice. "He's here to discuss his latest charitable initiative and his ongoing relationship with the media. Please welcome Prince Harry." The audience applauded warmly as Harry walked onto the set, his usual composed demeanor intact. He eased into the interview chair with practiced grace, flashing that familiar smile that had charmed millions. But Meghan Kelly wasn't smiling back. "Prince Harry, welcome to The View," Kelly began, her tone professional but noticeably cool. "I have to say it's interesting timing for this appearance, given some of the recent statements you've made about media responsibility." Harry shifted slightly, perhaps sensing the undercurrent. "Thank you for having me, Meghan. Yes, I think it's more important than ever to have these conversations about how the media operates and the impact it has on real people's lives." "Real people's lives," Kelly repeated, leaning forward just enough to draw in the audience. "That's fascinating, coming from someone who has made a career out of selling those very personal stories to the highest bidder. Tell me, how do you reconcile advocating for privacy while simultaneously writing tell-all books and giving explosive interviews?" The studio fell into silence. This wasn't the softball interview Harry had been expecting. Joy Behar looked uneasy, while Sarah Haynes glanced nervously between the two. Harry's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. "I think there's a difference between controlling your own narrative and having it controlled by others," he said carefully. "Meghan, when you've been lied about, when your family has been attacked, sometimes you have to set the record straight." "Set the record straight?" Kelly echoed, her voice sharpening like a blade. "Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I sit, it looks more like a systematic campaign to damage your own family for profit. You've accused them of racism, of cutting you off financially, of refusing to protect your wife, yet here you are, still using your royals title, still trading on the very institution you claim mistreated you." The tension in the studio was thick, every camera trained on their faces, capturing each flicker of emotion. Harry's jaw tightened, his composure straining under the weight of her words. "I think you're oversimplifying a very complex situation, Meghan. The institution and the family are two different things." "Are they?" Kelly shot back without missing a beat. "Because you seem to conflate them whenever it's convenient for your narrative. Your grandmother, who you claim to have loved deeply, was the head of that institution. Your father, who you've publicly criticized, is now the head of that institution. So when you attack the monarchy, you're attacking them personally, aren't you?" Harry's carefully cultivated calm was starting to unravel. "That's not fair, Meghan. You're twisting my words." "I'm using your words," Kelly countered coolly. "Your exact words, from multiple interviews and your book. You can't have it both ways, Prince Harry. You can't claim to want privacy while giving interview after interview. You can't claim to want to protect your family while publicly airing their private conversations. And you certainly can't claim to be a victim while living in a multi-million-dollar mansion and signing lucrative media deals." The other hosts exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene. Finally, Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "Meghan, I think we should let Harry respond." But Kelly wasn't finished, her voice cut through the silence like glass. "Oh, I want him to respond. I want him to explain to the mothers watching this show, the single mothers, the women working 2 jobs to make ends meet, how someone who was born into unimaginable privilege, who was never wanted for anything, can position himself as a victim of circumstance." Harry's face flushed, his royal training warring with visible frustration. "You don't know what it was like growing up in that environment, Meghan. You don't know what it's like to lose your mother to the very media you're defending, to watch your wife be torn apart by the same machine." "You're right," Kelly said, her tone unflinching. "I don't know what it's like to be born into royalty, but I do know what it's like to work for everything I have. I know what it's like to face media scrutiny and criticism without a team of publicists and a multi-million-dollar platform to fight back. And I know what accountability looks like." The audience sat frozen, the tension palpable. Harry glanced around the table, perhaps hoping for backup from the other hosts, but all he found were uneasy expressions. "Accountability?" he repeated, his voice rising. Let's talk about accountability, Meghan. Let's talk about the media's accountability for my mother's death, for the racist coverage of my wife, for the lies and distortions that have been printed about my family for decades. Kelly's eyes lit up at the opening. Your mother's death was a tragedy, and no one disputes that. But using her death as a shield for your own choices, for your own actions, that's not honoring her memory. That's exploiting it. And as for your wife, she was a working actress who dated a prince and became a duchess. Media attention comes with that territory. You knew that. She knew that. Everyone knew that. She didn't deserve the treatment she received, Harry said firmly, his voice tight with emotion. No one deserves unfair treatment, Kelly acknowledged, her words edged with steel. But life isn't fair, Prince Harry, and instead of handling it with grace and dignity like your grandmother did for 70 years, like your father has done, like your brother is doing, you chose to burn it all down, and now you want sympathy for the consequences of your own choices. Harry's hands clenched in his lap, his composure completely slipping. Now you think you know everything, don't you, Meghan? You sit here in your ivory tower, passing judgment on people you've never met, situations you've never experienced? Kelly arched an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Ivory tower? That's rich, coming from someone who literally lived in palaces. But you're right about one thing. I do pass judgment. It's called journalism, and it's what I've built my career on. Unlike some people, I didn't inherit my platform. Harry's jaw flexed. He opened his mouth, then closed it, the practiced calm of royal media training failing him. You have no idea the toll it's taken on Meghan, on us. She nearly— He stopped, catching himself. But the silence he left hung heavy. Kelly leaned in, seizing the hesitation. Nearly what, Harry? Nearly broke? Nearly left? Or nearly got exactly what she wanted? Global fame, sympathy, and a billion-dollar brand built on victimhood. The gasp from the studio audience was sharp enough to slice the air. One of the producers off camera waved frantically, signaling caution, but Kelly didn't blink. Harry's face hardened, his voice trembling with anger. How dare you diminish my wife's pain? She spoke out about suicidal thoughts, about isolation, about the cruelty she endured. Do you think she made that up? Kelly's voice lowered, deliberate, every syllable measured. I think she weaponized it. There's a difference between sharing a struggle to help others and using it to control the narrative, Harry, and your wife chose the latter. Every hardship became a storyline. Every grievance became a headline. You don't heal in front of Netflix cameras, you monetize. The crowd erupted in murmurs, the weight of the accusation pressing down on the room. Harry's composure shattered, his voice rose unrestrained. You have no heart, no compassion. You sit there in judgment while my wife poured out her truth to the world. You're nothing but a cold, cynical truth-teller, Kelly cut in sharply, her eyes locking onto his. And the truth, Harry, is that you and Meghan can't have it both ways. You can't cry victim while living in a California mansion. You can't demand privacy while signing million-dollar content deals. And you can't condemn the monarchy while cashing in on the title it gave you. The studio went silent, breathless, as Harry's face turned crimson. He looked as though he might rip the microphone off and storm out. But instead he sat there, trembling, trapped between fury and disbelief, while Kelly's words lingered in the heavy studio air. Harry's voice cracked with restrained rage. You sit there and talk about wealth and privilege like it erases trauma. Do you know what it's like to bury your mother in front of the whole world? To watch your wife crumble under the same spotlight? You don't know. You couldn't possibly know. Kelly didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her tone steady but laced with steel. Harry, tragedy doesn't make you immune to accountability. Yes, the world grieved with you when Diana died. But sympathy is not a lifelong credit card you can swipe every time you face criticism. You chose this path. You and Meghan built a brand on pain and outrage. That's not healing. That's exploitation. The audience stirred again, a low hum of shock and disbelief. Harry's hands clenched into fists on his knees, knuckles white. His voice rose, unsteady. You think this is exploitation? You think we endured hell just for headlines? We fought to protect our family, to escape a toxic institution that destroyed lives. Kelly's reply was swift, razor-sharp. And yet here you are, on the world stage again, cameras rolling, lights blazing, cashing in on the very institution you claimed destroyed you. If you truly wanted freedom, Harry, you would have disappeared. But you didn't. You chased the spotlight because you can't live without it. The words landed like a thunderclap. Harry's breath hitched, his face flushed with fury. He ripped the microphone from his lapel, the cord snapping against his chest. The audience gasped as he stood abruptly, his chair scraping back across the glossy studio floor. You're vile! He spat, voice shaking. This is nothing but an ambush. I won't sit here and let you smear my wife, my family, or my truth. Kelly stayed seated, calm and unyielding, her eyes locked on him. This isn't an ambush, Harry. This is accountability. And if you can't face that, then maybe the truth was never your mission. It was your mask. The studio froze. Harry's chest heaved, his fists tight at his sides, the weight of her words hanging like smoke in the air. For a long, breathless moment, it seemed he might shout again or walk out for good. Harry's face darkened, the heat rising in his chest. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. The studio lights suddenly felt blinding, oppressive, like the eyes of the entire world drilling into him all over again. He yanked the mic free, the wire snapping against his jacket as gasps rippled through the audience. "You don't get to lecture me about truth," Harry thundered, his voice echoing in the glassy studio walls. "You've never lived what I've lived. You've never had your pain turned into entertainment. You've never had your family destroyed by the same press you work for. You know nothing." Kelly didn't rise, didn't blink. She sat firm, her voice calm as a blade. "I don't need to live your life to see what you've become. A man who walked away from the crown only to crown himself a victim? A man who claims to hate the spotlight, but runs to it every chance he gets. You're not breaking cycles, Harry. You're feeding them." The audience reacted audibly, some clapping, some gasping, all caught in the sheer electricity of the moment. Harry's face twisted, his composure shattering. "You are disgusting!" He spat, his accent sharp with rage. "You call this journalism? This is character assassination. I won't play your game. Not for one more second." With that, he spun on his heel, storming toward the stage exit. The sound of his shoes striking the studio floor rang out like gunshots. Sharp, final, undeniable. A camera swiveled instinctively, catching the back of his figure as he disappeared behind the curtain, leaving only the echo of his fury behind. The studio was dead silent. Every pair of eyes turned to Kelly, who sat poised, unshaken, her hands folded neatly on the desk. She let the silence breathe for a moment, then leaned toward the camera. Her voice was cool, measured, and devastatingly clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed what happens when accountability meets entitlement. This was not an ambush. It was an interview, a chance to answer the questions millions of people deserve to hear." Prince Harry chose to walk away, and maybe that tells you more than any answer ever could. The audience broke into applause, cautious at first, then building into something undeniable. Kelly gave a small, composed nod, shuffling her notes before closing with her signature calm. "We'll be right back." The theme music swelled, but the viewers at home already knew. They had just watched history. The day Prince Harry came to Good Morning America, expecting sympathy and left in fury, exposed not by insults, but by the one thing he couldn't endure: the truth. Harry stormed out, the heavy thud of the stage door slamming reverberating through the studio like an exclamation point. For a moment, no one moved. The crew stood frozen, cameras lingering on the empty chair where the Duke of Sussex had sat just seconds before, his mic cord dangling like a severed tether. The silence was suffocating, electric, until Kelly finally shifted in her seat. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice calm but charged, "you just witnessed accountability in real time." The audience erupted. Some cheered loudly, clapping with relief, while others shook their heads in stunned disbelief at what they had just seen. A few even reached for their phones immediately, thumbs flying as they texted and tweeted the breaking moment. Within seconds, hashtags began to trend. Harry storms out, Kelly exposes Harry, and even the cutting Prince of Contradictions. Behind the cameras, producers whispered furiously into their headsets, keep rolling, we've got gold," one hissed. Floor managers gestured wildly, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let Kelly ride the wave. Social media screens lit up in the control room like fireworks as live clips spread before the interview had even officially ended. Meanwhile, Kelly sat motionless, her poise unshaken. She knew what had just happened. This wasn't a segment anymore. It was an earthquake, a royal walkout on live television. Her gaze remained steady on the camera, her words crisp. This conversation was about transparency, about truth. Viewers at home can decide who showed up with honesty and who ran from it. By the next hour, every outlet had seized the footage. CNN, Fox, the BBC, all running the same loop. Harry yanking off the mic, Harry's furious glare, Harry storming past the curtain as Kelly stayed rooted in calm defiance. Commentators scrambled to weigh in. Was this the end of Harry's credibility? Was Kelly too harsh, or just doing her job? The debate lit up like wildfire, and online, it was carnage. Memes of Harry stomping off set spread faster than wildfire. Side-by-sides compared him to a spoiled child storming away from dinner. Others hailed Kelly as the iron anchor, the only one brave enough to say what the world had been whispering for years. Even late-night comedians were sharpening their jokes before the sun had set. For Harry, the damage was instant. The image of a man too fragile to face questions burned into the public mind. For Kelly, the respect skyrocketed. Journalists, viewers, even skeptics praised her for holding the line when the Prince of Grievance lost his temper. And for the rest of us, we had just witnessed one of the most unforgettable live TV moments of the decade, the morning Prince Harry walked onto Good Morning America, expecting deference, and walked off, leaving behind a trail of fury, contradiction, and the undeniable sting of truth.